Hey there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, and today I'm gonna paint my couch. This couch has been at our house for about a year. It was my mother-in-law's, but when she moved into a memory care unit, she couldn't have this big piece of furniture, and we were gonna try to find a new home for it, but just about that same time, our couch that was only a couple years old, the frame broke, and we took it apart and tried to fix it, but it was all just cheap particle board, just basically disposable furniture, and I don't like disposable stuff. So I thought, this thing's 30 years old, it's going strong, and the upholstery's in really great shape. So I thought I would try painting it, and I'm going to use a product called Fab, and this is by our sponsor Heirloom Traditions Paint, and you can find them at heirloomtraditionspaint.com. And basically what this stuff is a medium to use with chalk paint so that you can paint your fabric and it will still feel like fabric, it won't be crunchy. So you can get this all in one by itself. And I can actually use, this isn't a very heavily patterned piece, so I could actually just use this clear Fab as the kind of the bottom coat, the primer, and the top coat sealer. But they also have it in a two-part kit, which has like a tinted white primer that you put on first, and then the clear sealer. So I figured since this does have a little bit of a pattern, and I was thinking I'll probably go through at least two of these jars. I'd be better off just to start with the one with a little bit of primer in it first, and then put my coat of paint, which I got it's like almost an avocado green color called Basque, and that's what I want to do for the base. And I also have this like a creamy white called a la mode that I thought it'd be nice, maybe, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe to stencil a design on top. There's also a skirt on the bottom of this couch that I think makes it look really dated, so I want to rip that off. So I'm hoping that I can just kind of slice it off with a utility knife and it won't fray crazy, so wish me luck on that. And yeah, I'm gonna paint my couch, so wish me luck, and you can watch the process unfold. Okay, cutting off the skirt was not a big deal. I did it on the back side first to make sure I didn't mess it up before doing it on a side that's actually going to show. So this is what I found to work really well. I'm using one of these little utility knives that you can snap off the blade when it gets dull, and I'm locking it so I have about a ½ inch exposed. And then what I'm doing is kind of getting right underneath that piping, okay, with my, can you see that? Right underneath the piping with my knife, and then I am just really jamming it up in there and pulling it towards myself. I'm just trying to cut through the fabric and the interfacing, and it might take a couple. There, see how it came out really well. I'm gonna have to cut over where there's that extra layer, but not a big deal. And look at all the nice storage I have underneath here. Typically we put, I'm gonna get comfortable. Typically we have baskets under here with the coloring books and magazines, just to kind of keep the coffee table clutter free, and it'll be even easier to reach stuff. And I found like I think a dozen little cat toys under there when I was pulling it away from the wall to cut the skirting off the back. So you want to do that. If you do have a skirt to remove, just try to keep it so the piping is nice and smooth and neat and you don't have any fraying underneath. And I figure doing it now, if I do have a little bit of fraying, I can seal down any loose ends when I go to prime it. Okay, I have also went ahead and vacuumed the upholstery. You want to make sure you don't have any cat fur on it. And when I pulled out the skirt, I could also see kind of some dust kicking up into the air, and I just wanted to make sure that the fabric was free of debris and nice and clean. You could also, you know, if you had like a really dingy couch, if you wanted to, you could wash it beforehand. Just make sure it's completely dry before you start. Now the nice thing about the Fab with the tinting in it, the white tinting, is that you can see where you've been. When you're doing if you're using the all-in-one, which is clear, it may be difficult to see where you've been. I think that would be fine on this couch because it's not a really bold pattern, but I like knowing that I can see exactly where I've started to paint. You want to make sure to use a fairly stiff brush when you're applying paint on fabric, because it's going to drag a little bit. It's not like you're painting on a canvas which has been primed already, even though it's fabric as well. So using something like this, like stiff fabric, well, this is a stiff chalk paint brush, it's going to go a lot easier than trying to use something that's like a nylon brush that's a little floppy. You could probably also use a nice high quality house paint brush, like one of the Purdy brushes, if you haven't done this before, I would avoid the chip brushes because those tend to have like softer bristles and they also tend to shed quite a bit. So you want a nice high quality brush that's not going to shed. And if you don't have any, you can find some appropriate brushes over at Heirloom Traditions Paint. And I'm just going to go and coat all of my fabric with this. I'm actually pleased with how far this is going. And this step is going to make it so you don't use so much of your chalk paint. So I'm hoping that I can do this whole project with 1 quart for the base color anyway. Okay, day 2 on the couch project. I let the primer dry overnight. And when I got up and I felt the fabric this morning, it felt kind of stiff. So what you want to do at this point is you want to get like a brown paper bag or a fine sanding sponge. Brown bag works great. Go to the grocery store and just ask for brown bags when you when they pack up your groceries. And then it's going to take some elbow grease. You want to really work that fabric. And I just kind of did circular motions until it felt soft again. And I didn't prime the back. I actually ran out of primer before I got to the back of the couch. So I kind of reached over to the back and I felt the fabric that hasn't been treated. And it felt the same as this after I sanded it with the bag. Then after I did that, I went around and I vacuumed everything just to pick up any dust. I could see the dust on the floor from sanding that down. And I recommend doing this between every layer of paint you put on. So you do it after the primer because if like you got like a little bit of maybe some cat hair or a fuzzy or just some of the fabric kind of pilled up when you're priming it, if you don't sand it and you go over with your top coat, it's going to trap that pill onto the fabric. This is just going to kind of break it down, also add a little flexibility into the fabric and make it work for you. So now I'm ready to put on my chalk paint. Hopefully this will cover in 1 coat since I primed it. I really think it's going to. And what I have here is a quart of, it's called Basque. I'll put a link in the color name in the video description from Heirloom Traditions Paint. And you want to stir it. Even though it comes pretty well mixed up, it's still always a good idea to stir your paint just in case it sat on the shelf for a little while. I'm just using a chopstick to do that. And I actually just keep like a cardboard box on the floor that I can set my paint down when I'm not using it. And I'm using a chalk paintbrush that's flush on the bottom. And I'm just going to start applying it just in circular strokes. And I can see already that the paint is going farther than the primer did. The primer, I used a lot more primer than I anticipated because this fabric, this particular fabric was very porous. It was kind of like a coarse woven upholstery fabric and it really just sucked up the paint. So, so definitely prime it because your primer is going to cost less than your high quality paint typically. And it looks like it's going to cover really well. I like the chalk paint brushes because they're very durable versus like a foam brush. But you could use a foam brush if that's what you have. I know some people do. But it might wear out. You might need to have a few as you go along. And I bet even a roller would work really well, but I didn't have any little rollers. So, so I'm going to use the chalk paint brush because that's what it's designed for. And give this a coat. And we will meet again after this coat is done. Okay, I had a little change of plans. I started to run out of the green because I had 1 quart of the dark green as soon as I got the back, sides, and front frame and side frame done. And I also thought that kind of avocado color was looking a bit 70s, and ombre is really popular right now, so I decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I poured some light, really kind of like almost a white in here, and then stirred it up. And that way I could kind of get this ombre effect. Also, because the white color has more pigmentation, it also covered better, so I'm not going to have to do 2 coats. So I also brought the ombre look up on the side arms too. And then I'm just going to mix, make sure I have plenty here of this lighter color that I mixed. And then I'm going to do the cushion in that so there'll be a little bit of contrast, so it won't be all like super, super dark. Because once it was on the fabric, I'll show you down here on the frame, it looked really, really dark. I mean, look at that. It seems darker. I know it's going to dry probably a little bit lighter because it's still wet now, but it was much darker than what I wanted, and it was quite a stark contrast going from the cream colored couch that I had to this super dark green. So now that I have this more sagey color mix here with the white and the darker green, I'm much more happy with that, and I like how it kind of fades into a lighter color, and then I can do the cushion, kind of that sage color, and I think it will look really awesome when it's all dry. So we'll be back when it's all dry. Oh, one more thing in case you want to do this. This brush right here is a flat, kind of like paddle brush. And so what I did to get this ombre look is I took the regular chalk paint brush I was using. It's totally full of paint right now. I'm going to try to lift it up so I don't kind of drip it all over everything. So I took the regular chalk brush that I was using and I did like a stripe along the bottom. And then I took the paddle and I kind of dragged it all up, and then I went back and forth until it smoothed out and I had a nice even ombre. So there's how I did that. You might want to practice it on like a scrap of fabric or a piece of wood or something till you get the hang of it. But I had to work quickly once I decided to do that, and I didn't turn the camera on. But basically, it was just swash it across with one brush and then blend it with the other one. So not too difficult. Okay, it's a couple days later, and we're back to the couch, and I decided to give this a few days so I could think about it, decide whether I like this color or not, decide if I wanted another coat. And I did the paper bag sanding like I showed you previously, and I was still finding my fabric to be a little too stiff. So I went and got a fine sanding sponge, and I went over it with that, and it distressed it a little bit, and then I found that I really liked that look. Now you may see some faint striping here. If you remember from the before picture, this was a kind of a cream and dusty blue type of stripe pattern, but also the fabric, the way it was woven, had different textures to it. So I've almost got like a little pinstripe in here, and then a wider stripe, and then, you know, a stripe with pinstripes in it. And I like that I can still see the texture of the little pink tufts, even though it's all tone on tone now. I liked that texture. I felt when I freshly painted it and it was darker and solid, it was just too much. It was too much of one color. That's kind of one of the reasons I ombre'd it. The other reason was, of course, I was running low on the paint. I will talk a little bit about estimating your project during the frequently asked questions section at the end of this video. But what I'm going to do now that I'm happy with the way that this looks, I've sanded it, I've vacuumed it thoroughly to make sure there's no dust, and also I tested this. There was no color transfer. So you're not going to get, even if I didn't seal it, I wasn't going to get any color on my clothes, which is something I've heard happen to people that have done chalk paint upholstery before. So I'm glad that that isn't an issue at this point. This Fab Sealer is the last step in this process, and this the clear stuff, you can actually use it as a primer and a sealer, but I used the tinted primer because I had the 2 packs there that included both of them. And so basically what you want to do is just put on one coat, one thin coat, and I'm just using a wax finishing brush here. I'm just dipping like probably the bottom 1/4 inch into the sealer, and I'm just going to give it a even coat, and I will kind of cross hatch a little bit so I disrupt those strokes. I don't want it to look like painted furniture. I want it to feel a lot more natural. Now this looks really white here. It's going to dry completely clear. I actually tested it on one of the arms of the chair just to make sure it didn't stiffen it at all. It actually made it feel a little bit softer. So what I'm going to do here is add a coat of this, and then we'll come back when it's all dry and I'll do the frequently asked questions portion of the video. I hope you're enjoying this so far. I am, and I'm really liking that I have pretty much a brand new couch now that I'm almost done here. Okay, it's dry, and I just lightly sanded it down with a paper bag, and it feels pretty good. I was really relieved because after I had the green paint on, I paper bag sanded it and it was rough, and so I used a fine sanding sponge and it got better, but it was still really stiff. But the all-in-one Fab, the clear stuff that's on in the purple label, that really softened it up. I did a really little bit of light sanding with a paper bag, and it's pretty soft. I'm really happy. It's not as soft as the original fabric though, so I want you to keep that in mind. The fabric on this couch was a very coarse, kind of burlappy fabric, so it was and a natural fiber, so it was very absorbent. So like I mentioned, it absorbed so much of the primer. It took like 5 jars to do this couch, and then it took about 2 quarts of paint to paint one coat. And then when I came to putting this last Fab on, it only used like a 1 1/3 jars to cover the entire couch. So every layer it takes less. And so I was able to do this with 3 coats of product versus 4 to 6 coats of chalk paint, which other tutorials say take your chalk paint and water it down and do 4 to 6 coats. But I've seen the results to still be kind of crunchy and flaky at that, and gosh, 6 coats, that's going to take a long time. This probably took me about 6 hours start to finish to do, hands-on time. So it is a bit of an undertaking. So I decided I would offer some tips here and advice as far as planning your project and what to expect. I think I would recommend that if you've never painted upholstery before, that you start with a smaller project like an upholstered kitchen chair, or maybe a formal sitting chair that you're not going to use every day. This being our main couch, I had to plan this project around my family's schedule, so when the kids would leave for school for the day, I would throw on the coat of primer, and it would take most of the day to dry because it absorbed so much. It actually wasn't dry till the next day, because I didn't want the kids to kind of flop down on a wet couch and get covered with paint, or throw something on the couch and have it get covered with paint. So I just wanted to kind of plan it really well. The green paint took probably close to 12 hours to dry, and this final coat of Fab took only probably about 4 hours to dry. So because each layer absorbs less, absorbs less, doesn't use as much, it dries a little bit quicker each time. So if I did want to do another coat of the green, it wouldn't have taken as long to dry or taken as much product. I would recommend, if you're doing a couch like this, if it's a porous material, like the kind of burlappy type of material that was on this, I would probably get 3 of the kits of the Fab, and what I would do is I would begin with priming the areas that we're going to show with the tinted primer, and I would do like the back and the seat and probably the arms. That way, if I ran out of those first 3 containers, I could dip into the purple ones and get around the edges and off to the back, and the parts that aren't really going to show so much. The tinted primer is going to block a little bit more pattern, but not a ton, and it's basically the same product, just with a little bit of white tinter. Otherwise, you'll end up buying like 4 or 5 sets, and you'll have all kinds of clear left over. I only used 1 1/3 jar to go over this entire thing that took me nearly 5 jars to cover in the primer. So you can kind of borrow from the top coat, so you don't have to overbuy and end up with a bunch of leftovers. Even though this leftover stuff is going to be really fun for summer projects, like painting those canvas shoes that are really inexpensive at your department store, or canvas aprons or canvas tote bags. I know the kids are going to have a ball with this, and they wanted to help me paint more furniture, which I don't know if I'm ready for, because this was quite a project. But like I said, start small so you know what we're getting into. I also recommend that you start on a project that is tight-fitting, like this. And if you don't have such a porous couch, maybe you have a tighter woven fabric that it has been scotch guarded, or is just like, think of it, if you spill some water on the couch, does the water bead up, or does it absorb right in there quick as can be? If the water tends to puddle and bead up a little bit, you're not going to use as much primer. It's not as absorbent. The stuff isn't going to soak in as much as it did on my couch. So if you have a smoother weave, a smoother fabric, a tighter weave, or a synthetic fabric, you're not going to need as much. So maybe deduct a jar or 2 from what I'm recommending. So just kind of play it by ear. Yours is not going to take as much as mine did, because this was a super absorbent natural fiber. Great, upholstery was in great shape, so I was really lucky. So yes, I would avoid doing anything that's really baggy, because it'll be really easy to miss like areas under folds and whatnot. Tufted furniture is going to be a little bit more difficult. So if you have like a headboard or something that's got all those little buttons and tufts, that's going to be tricky, because you're going to need to get paint underneath in all those folds, and it could be really easy to miss some, or to get too much, I think, stuck under there. So I would just try to go with a nice overall smooth upholstery. I think this is really good for outdoor upholstery. I would definitely use it to spruce up like a patio umbrella or awnings, because those items are expensive to replace. I probably wouldn't use it to spruce up my, $25 Target seat covers that I buy every couple of years, because the product does get a little bit expensive, and the time that you're putting into it. I'm gonna only put the time into something that's really gonna save me money, because I'm updating something like a nice sofa that otherwise I'd be replacing, and they don't make sofas as nice as they used to. So I'm probably getting a better sofa than going out and spending $1,000 on a new one that's, who knows, made with what, chipboard or particle board or whatever under there. I know that I've got a decent piece of upholstery here, a decent piece of furniture, so it's a no-brainer to spend the money and the time painting and upgrading it. And just make sure you follow the steps. Make sure you are ready to see a project to the end if you do undertake something like couch painting, because it's going to take some time, and you have to follow the steps properly, or you're going to end up with a crunchy couch. That means sanding in between. And after you sand, every time you sand, vacuum thoroughly. You want to vacuum around your couch, but also you want to take the cushions off, you want to vacuum in and around it, you want to vacuum all of the upholstery so that you don't have those bits of dust getting back in your paint, because that's going to make it rough. Okay, it's going to make it feel like sandpaper, and you don't want that. You want that. I can't stop feeling this couch because it's actually gotten really soft after this top coat, and I was quite worried after the green coat because it was a little crunchy. I'm not gonna lie. So so definitely don't skimp on this final step. And it didn't take that much to do this. I mean, I don't know if you skip the primer step. I think if you skip the primer step, it would suck in so much paint that you'd have a really crunchy film to deal with. So so I'm really happy with the results, and I hope this helps you if you're undertaking a project. Just keep in mind, it is a long process. You have to be willing to spend the time to do this. It took me probably 6 to 8 hours of hands-on time for this. I want you to know what you're getting into. Start with a little chair, see how you like it, and then graduate onto your couch. And just, you know, follow the steps, take your time, and enjoy the process. You get to make something that's totally different than anything anybody else has, and that's pretty awesome. I want to thank Heirloom Traditions Paints for sponsoring this video. Please check out the links in the video descriptions to all the products I use, and use the coupon code FRUGAL to save 10% on your order. So that can bring the cost down, and you get free shipping on orders over $75, and I think under that it's $5 flat rate fee. So so very affordable. I hope you found this useful, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below and I will help you out. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.